Hi, this is Nerve Check. I'm Ray, and I'm here with the host of Crossroads, Corey Reynolds, also the host of the largest tournament of Kings of War that I believe exists in North America for sure, with the U.S.
So
Masters
now,
2019.
yes, sir. Hey, thanks for having me, Ray.
And you were gracious enough to come on and to discuss tournament TOing as the veteran, talking to somebody who just ran his first proper tournament in a dog's age this past weekend. So we can talk some challenges, whether or not they scale up, and talk about your upcoming tournament and what you're looking forward to on your end.
Yeah, that'll be good. I think it'll be a good discussion. So let's have at it.
So first off, I ran King of the Thames. I picked a location reasonably close to my house, about 15 minutes away. I picked it in April. I rented it in April for a July tournament for a one-day. We had 16 attendees, which was nice. We only had one drop, so everyone who said they were coming actually, for the most part, came, which I'm very grateful for. And it ran reasonably well. We had coffee, we had food, we had a venue, we had a bar downstairs that people could go to. So in my mind, it's what I want for a one-day event. There were obvious hiccups that I did. To begin with, the venue wasn't open on time, which wasn't my fault. The person who is responsible for opening it, his TV broke the night before and he had issues. And this is small town Ontario. As some of the attendees pointed out, they said, you know, we were worried when we turned off the highway and we saw all the cornfields and we were wondering where we're going. Because they're like, Ray, you said you live in the boonies, but this is properly the boonies.
We're playing in a barn today, folks.
A Legion. So you know, the drinks were $5 Canadian, which makes it what, $4, $3.50,
maybe $3.50.
So you couldn't bring alcohol in, but it was perfectly priced. And I think the only bar in town, because it's a town 10,000 people.
No, there you go. Yeah.
So it worked out well. Everyone was lovely. We got everything set up and going. Second lesson learned was to have a, what is it called? A ringer list prepped in advance. I did not. I brought my army, but I didn't have the list. And so
yeah.
When it was determined I was required, I just grabbed my orc list, figuring that's an appropriate ringer army, and just put it on the table.
Sure.
Well,
I think with ringer list, it's always the thing, because if you're TOing, right, you want to have something that plays quick and plays easy and doesn't require a lot of thinking and lets you get through your games fast one way or the other, so you can still do the TO duties while still playing the game, right?
So between the three, I had Green Lady, Trident Realm, or Orcs. Which would you go with?
I probably would go with Green Lady, just because the alpha list are really like, okay, I'm going. And you can play them to be really fast and aggressive, and just in turn 2, you're playing and you're winning or losing the game in turn 2. Although Green Lady's pretty top tier, so I think you'd have to build the list to be a little less competitive than your typical Green Lady list, right?
So I went Orcs, figuring nice and simple. I don't have to think. I can just shove my models 10 inches ahead and probably turn 3 combat instead of turn 2.
Yeah, Orcs are probably more appropriate for like a ringer list. Yeah, I agree.
But we both agree Trident Realm was like right out. Like,
oh yeah, you're gonna grind it out till turn 6, turn 7, no matter what, with the Trident Realm list. And it's so finicky to play. Yeah, hey, that's a lose-lose.
But I only had to play one game because a person told me they were running late. So I just began with the Ringer Army, and they showed up and they got to take over midway through and then play the rest of the games. So once he arrived, it was actually much more relaxed for me, not having to do a Ringer Army plus TOing at the same time.
Yeah, no, that is good. But you know what's nice is I found with Kings of War that it's probably the only game system that you can conceivably play as a ringer and still run the events.
Small events, not big events.
Yeah, I've done it a couple times at Crossroads. It's not fun. I wouldn't say I love doing it.
No, because you're stressed answering people's questions for like line of sight or the odd rules question of like, hey, look, do you know this? And then you're trying to make sure all that's sorted. You're trying to make sure the food's arriving on time and everything else. So it's just,
right.
I was very glad not to have that responsibility.
Yeah. And at Crossroads, I always feel like I'm not giving my opponent the best game because I'm not really attentive to what's going on there, because you're right. You're being pulled in so many different directions at a larger event like that.
So it was a fun time. I'm going to be talking to John and Alex, because they're the primary people who do events in Ontario, about when's the next time I can host. I know you book roughly a year in advance for your venue and for Crossroads.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much. Yes, since it's in a hotel and it's in a ballroom in a hotel, in order to get the room block and the venue lockdown, I usually book a little bit more than a year in advance. So I usually have my dates set before the current year's event takes place.
So for me, I'm looking at whether or not I can run a 2-day next year in Ontario. And I would like to do it 9 months in advance. I kind of want to know when US Masters is,
sure,
to avoid that as much as possible. And I'm thinking I just want to give all the players, possible participants, as much time as possible to be like, hey, look, we're going to do it on this weekend or that weekend. Yep. Because it's a time commitment for everyone coming, time commitment for you as the organizer to set it up and so forth.
Yeah, I think if you're doing a 2-day, you want to advertise that far in advance, right? So you can get on people's calendars, like you're already talking about, avoiding other large events around the same time frame. So that's really the planning window you should be looking at anyway.
So my cunning plan right now is to probably set it for the second weekend of August, dependent upon when US Masters is next year. But that's one timeline that I'm thinking about. Either then or May, not really sure. But yeah, I'll talk to the guys to figure out when makes sense, and knowing when the other tournaments are in the schedule that draws players, because you don't want to be in the same month as somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I can only imagine you're having a bit of a conflict between having Crossroads and Masters in the same month.
You know, I was planning on having less attendees this year than last, but we are right about at the same. I think we have one more team now than we did last year currently signed up. So I'm kind of surprised by that, to be honest.
Okay. I'm actually surprised as well, to be honest. I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I was totally resigned to like maybe 60 or 70 players this year instead, but no, we're already above 90, so that's good, I guess. That's a good problem to have. But that does surprise me.
So we were talking just before I began recording about what your thoughts are on soft scores, I guess, on a 1-day versus a 2-day.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't think you need to have soft scores at a 1-day. I think it overly complicates things and doesn't really differentiate your winners from your losers. And I don't think that's what you're after anyway. Like you said, the paint scores, I am totally open to people coming with unpainted armies just to put something on the table and get players engaged, especially newer players. So there's not the intimidation of having a painted army up and ready to go.
Absolutely. We had a couple people with proxy units. We had a couple people, maybe two people with gray armies, just trying something out, seeing if it works before investing the time and effort to paint an army. So I can totally respect that, and respect the fact that when you go to a 1-day, what you're really getting, in my mind, is a guarantee of 3 games with hopefully some food.
Exactly. Yep. And I think if you want to have a painting award for somebody that does bring out an army, I think that's totally cool too.
Absolutely. Now, when I got asked about sports, my mind was, well, there's no one in Ontario who I wouldn't be happy to play against. Like,
right.
So why do I need to do a sports award amongst Canadians? So
it's a good question, right? And I think that's a a regional thing kind of up here is that I don't know that I would ever. It's hard to find an area where you would say in a one day you'd be worried about a sportsmanship award being a thing, right? So I think
Now,
you're trying to beat a dead horse with that one.
absolutely, and like you said, it'd be just a whole nother category of scores that I'd have to worry about, take care for, account for, etc.
Yeah, and especially if you're trying to get new players to show up, and then the anxiety of trying to understand what's the right gaming etiquette, what's tournament etiquette. I mean, what should I do and shouldn't I do if sportsmanship is a thing that's being scored, right? So just keep it as simple. Just let the game results kind of stand and be what they are. And I think that is all you really need to do for a one day event.
Now, how does that translate in your mind and with all your experience to a 2 day?
I like to having the sportsmanship score. I guess in our region up here, we like our soft scores, right? And so we like to have pretty armies on the table. So appearance is always a decent chunk out of your tournament score, and sportsmanship is too. I personally like to see something that from maybe the best painted army to the worst painted army in the room. That differential might be the difference between a minor loss to a minor win, something like that, right? So enough to swing a win's worth of tournament points in your favor. Sportsmanship, I don't necessarily think you want to have as big of a differentiation in worst sports to best sports if your area has a lot of good sportsmen in it, which ours does, gratefully, right? So
I got to play against Kevin Spear at Orktown, so like I got outsports significantly.
Outsports. Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't want to see such a big spread in sportsmanship scores. I know some people like doing the rank your opponents 1 through 5. I am not a big fan of that because somebody's always got to eat the bad score or the lower end of that. And I was like, it's very rare for me to play somebody at an event now where I want to put them in that lower half of the rankings, right? So I think for sportsmanship scoring at a larger event, I'm okay with just like a ding system where I'm like going to say, okay, maybe I've got just a pass fail or a 1, 2, 3 kind of gradient to score somebody's sportsmanship, and then maybe some best players or best opponent, second best opponent votes that add in a point or two here or there. So it's not such a dramatic difference in your best to worst sport. I mean, if you have kind of the pass fail system, that's going to catch if you have somebody that's a problem sportsmanship wise anyway, right?
And then I guess the only problem is in my mind, doing the sports score, rank your like top 2, that's coming at the end because you can't do that until after game 5. So it adds a bit of time to the calculation of scores.
Yes, although with the lovely Google Doc that Mike Atkins has put together, that has become a much less of a pain point now. So I used to, before Crossroads was a team tournament, when it was a singles tournament, I used to have people kind of rate their best sport after game 4 just to be able to get all those tabulations done. And that was always my biggest complaint that I heard is like, what if the best player I play is game 5? I was like, well, if that's the case, then they probably got 4 great sportsmanship votes from the people they played before. So I tried to discount it, but it was a pain because you're right, trying to calculate and tabulate all those scores for 80 people after the end of the event, as people are probably lackadaisical in getting those votes in, takes time that you don't really want to spend at the end of the event. So having Mike put together what he's already done to have that voting done with a click of a button on your phone has been genius, frankly. So that's great.
I didn't use that for the one day. I really wish I did because I would like to practice with it before I try to use it for something more serious. But yeah, that would be a future Ray problem.
Yeah, using that for one day is probably a great idea, right? Gets you familiar with it on a smaller scale.
But this one for me was just, can I find a venue? Will people travel to come to the area? Because my thoughts are that I can, in theory, grab people from less than an hour and a half to 2 hours to come for a one day. I think that's a
Yeah,
possible.
I think that's appropriate, right? I think once you get to like 3 hours, it's tough for people to travel that far for a one day.
So that was my thought was would people come out to the boonies to, who's going to show up in July and just working through the kinks. Do I have the terrain, tables, etc.? How does the venue work? Because like you said, you have a long-standing relationship with your venue.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in that regard. But I mean, the Legion sounds like a great place to do an event, right? Because, like you said, it's pretty reasonably priced. You've got a bar on site, food you can bring in, so you got ample amounts of space, and they're usually pretty readily available in most towns, right? So it's a great spot to host. If you have all the terrain and stuff, it's a great place to host an event or something like that for a small one day.
Absolutely. But I can completely understand why people want to host one days at game stores. It increases visibility, gets you out there in the community, gets you known, etc. So like my personal view is I'm quite happy to go to a game store for one days. Like I can understand it makes it easier for the organizer, the terrain's there, tables are there, everything's easily set up. And there's the visibility amongst the people who come into the store to buy things, like what's going on.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the limitation, right? If you as the organizer don't have enough terrain or tabletoppers or whatever to make it work on your own and just needing space, then you kind of are required to have a game store nearby to kind of supplement all that. Yeah, we don't have any game store around us that's even big enough to host more than 3 or 4 tables for an event like that. So yeah, that does struggle that some people have to look for alternative locations like a Legion or something like
that. And for you in the States, I think it would be veterans clubs.
Yeah, there's lots of different types. There's Elks Lodges. We have American Legions. And
okay.
A bunch of different types of organizations that have something similar to the Legion that we've been up to for the King Beyond the Wall and whatnot. So yeah, very similar setups with a bar and usually a bunch of old people hanging around drinking. So yes, it's very similar.
Well, they were there starting at 1, and some of them didn't leave till like when the bar closed at 7. So when you're the only bar in town, people come.
Captive audience.
So no, that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I'd like to run one day, but just to continue to iron out some kinks before I try a 2-day. Just have a couple of one days.
If you got 16 people for a one day in the middle of July, that's a really good turnout, I think. To be honest.
Well, and then your event, like I'll be honest, I know it's in September. I know it's towards the end of September, and it's kind of in my calendar every year. Just like events. There's Orktown at the beginning of June.
Yeah.
There's Crossroads in September. There's Mountaineer, which is in August. Not running this year, but it's fluctuated June to August. Nerdhammer is November, December. So everyone kind of has the little points. You and I were talking about how you've already planned or have in mind your date for Crossroads 2025. And
right.
What did you find, or what do you find is the best way to get the word out there that you're running a tournament in the future? You don't have to do it with Crossroads.
So that's right. I haven't had to do that in years, right? So when I first started doing this was before social media was a thing. So you advertised on forums, right? Internet forums back in the day, and posted it everywhere you could and plastered it. But also, I traveled to a lot of tournaments, right? So you get the word out by being a guy that gets out to a lot of events, and then people reciprocate and become tours once they get to know you. And I think that still holds true, especially if you're trying to draw people from other regions, right? So people from other, and I'm talking geographical regions, right? So if we want people from 6, 7, 8 hours away, they're going to be reluctant to travel unless they know you and know that you run a quality event. Like I go out to Adepticon, I'll travel out to Masters and get to know a lot of people from different areas, and I think that also helps draw people from different geographic locations that they're more willing to make a significant travel investment to come to Crossroads because now they know me. We have a relationship. So I think there's still that personal touch that really helps people want to come to an event and travel significant distances.
And that's where I have to make it down to the Michigan tournament because it's about 2.5 hours away from me. But this is my first year in this house, so it's the first year that's 2.5 hours away from me, whereas before it was about 10. So I didn't drive the 10 hours for it, but I'll drive the 2.5 hours this year in October to go check it out.
Yeah, I do want to go there. So Blake Schroed and I keep talking because we meet up at Adepticon. He's like, we got to find a way to make Crossroads and the Michigan GT not kind of overlap so close to each other.
Well, and that's what we talked about, where like you don't want to be in the same month as somebody else.
Yeah. It's tough, especially if you want people to travel great distances, right?
So you've introduced some new features to Crossroads this year. Anything you want to talk about or?
Well, so we're doing the team tournament again. So that's been a rousing success for the last 4 years. So I think people love that and love that style of event. So that's what we're going to keep doing that until it stops being a thing. So people are really happy. Couple of things that we're doing differently this year. We're just changing how the matchups are done or the pairings are done at the beginning of each round. So people have there's a little more strategy involved with how people match up with their individual opponents within the team structure. So that'll be new, and I think that'll be a good change. The other thing we're doing, because now COVID was a thing, and now people drop last minute due to illnesses and stuff, and it's much harder to manage drops in a team environment than it is in a singles environment, right? If for a singles environment, I need one ringer to make sure I have even number of players. Now with teams, you really need to make sure you have even number of teams, and you need to make sure that you have enough players on a team to continue to allow that team to play. So in the past years, what we do, just kind of born out of necessity, is if a team had a drop, they would play with 3 players. And if they ended up playing a team with 4 players, that odd man out would go play against another odd man out from another matchup from 2 other teams. So nobody was left not playing a game. And we could still accommodate teams that lose players due to illness or life or whatever, because that's going to happen. The thing that we had always done in the past was at Crossroads, we had kind of sum totaled everyone's scores, individual scores, to get a total score for each team each round. And so that the teams that were 3-player teams were at a significant disadvantage because they were basically missing that 4th player. So to give the 3-man teams a little ability to compete at the event, we're going to an average score this year. So the average score by each individual on the team is what your team score is for the event. So that should give those teams that are shorter player an opportunity to even compete in the event, to be honest.
Okay. So hopefully there'll be no people dropping a member, lowest ranking member of their team.
That is a great point. And I actually put something out. It's actually in the rules pack, is that in order to come to Crossroads, you have to have a registered team of 4. You have to have 4 players. Somebody drops, okay, but I have a pool of ringers, and I'm going to randomly assign them. And some of them have played before. Some of them have never played before. So you run the risk of having a total novice playing on your team and dragging your overall average score down. So that is how we are combating the potential for somebody to game that system a little bit.
Well, I can assure you it won't be the team that I'm leading, which is the Red Devils. And it's 4 of us coming up from Ontario. So we're going up there. We're trying for a solid middle of the pack countercharger award. That's our goal. Yeah,
that's a good goal to have.
And to have fun. That's the 2 goals for the weekend.
Very awesome. Very awesome, Sal. I think we've got 2 Canadian teams and 1 Western New York / Canadian team coming down too. So got normal, strong representation from that area.
Strong representation. So on that note, any final thoughts that you want to give to the watchers? Or
yeah, so something that we've been actually toying around here, because the way the Northeast region is kind of split up. You've got those of us in central Western New York and Canada, right, that are on the far western end of our region, and then you've got another population of people that are in the far east in Albany and Massachusetts and Cape Cod, and even more people growing out there in the Connecticut and Massachusetts area where you've got new groups kind of sprouting up. So Crossroads is kind of the one event where everybody kind of gets together because it's kind of centrally located, but it's challenging for the people to go in either direction because it's such a long distance. So there's not as many tournaments where a lot of those people get together. So what we've been toying around with here is something we used to do back in the Warhammer days. Was we had a spring Crossroads, so an event where it was decidedly smaller, maybe about half the size of what the fall Crossroads was. So we are looking at bringing a spring Crossroads back now that the Unplugged GT is kind of folded up its shop for now. So looking in that April timeframe where there's not any other Northeast region GTs. So we're hoping to spin that up in 2025 next year. Again, to give more opportunity to have some events that Central and Western New York and Canadian folks have a chance to get some more events into.
Well, that would be great because you're absolutely right. Going to, I'm probably the one extreme of the Northeast region because I travel everywhere to get to Orktown.
Yes, you do.
It was about a 10 or 11-hour drive, and that was like straight on the 90. I took the 90 crossing the border all the way.
That's a long drive for you.
Well, there were four of us.
Straight drive.
Yeah, it's straight drive, no turns, like you're on the road. So having something that's only 5 hours away is a lot better.
Yeah, so I think that's something that we've talked about kind of as a region too, is just having some more events that are easily accessible by people on our side of the region.
Should we think about, and I only bring this up because of my, I would say, lineage coming from the Mid-Atlantic, should we be looking at a club trophy for the Northeast? Are we almost at that size where it would be appropriate?
It does seem that way, right? Because you've got your groups, right? You've got the Western New York Canadian groups. You got those of us kind of Central New York and Albany, the Shambling Horde guys. You've got the Unplugged Gamers. You've got the War Kings out in Cape Cod, and then you also have another group that kind of has just recently started running events out in the middle of Massachusetts, and there's a group up in New Hampshire. So I do think we're starting to get to the point where you're getting a lot more clubs and people playing Kings of War in our region, similar to what you've got in the Mid-Atlantic. So,
because that was a real shot in the arm when the Mid-Atlantic introduced the Cornwall Cup, and everyone was all of a sudden coming out of the woodwork, bringing team members there to be like, hey, look, come play with us, be on our team, be in our clubs. So,
and you've got a lot of club activity too, and I think that's certainly helped kind of spur on some of the tournament attendance too.
Absolutely. I think and even in the Northeast, we've seen a lot of tournaments which have sold out. If I recall,
Yes.
Dead of Winter has, Orktown has. So
yeah, I think it's rare for any of the events now to have additional space, extra space, right? So I think Crossroads is probably the only one, just because we have such a huge venue. So we could take a lot. We could go up to 120 players. So, but every other place is pretty much capped at capacity and has a waiting list.
And we're probably approaching 96-ish at Crossroads.
Yep, that's what we're looking at. I'm looking to get one more team that would give us 22 teams for the event right now. So if I can get there, I'll feel pretty happy about where we're at.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
That's my open advertisement. One more team for Crossroads, folks.
Well, maybe Felix can get a team from the Midwest and come
That's
up.
a great idea. We need some more of the Ohio guys to come out. That would be ideal.
Is it Ohio War Kings as well? Like, don't they have the same team as the
I would pair them up round one: the Ohio War Kings and the New England War Kings.
Wait! It would be a random pairing.
Random pairing for the title of Best War Kings.
Yeah, that would be great. So, Corey, thanks a lot for your time. I look forward to seeing you actually at the end of this month for Masters.
Yes, sir.
A month
after. Be on the wall too, right?
Oh yeah. So we'll be seeing each other 3 times in the next 2 months.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have a lot of one-on-one time here soon.
But thanks a lot for your time, and I'll be definitely picking your brain as to how to set tournaments up going ahead.
Very good. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks.